Great. Thank you everyone for joining our webinar today on modernizing every stage of your lending process. Welcome. Before we go ahead and get started, just want to go into some housekeeping items. So you all have been automatically muted. We are also, of course, recording this session, which will be sent out afterwards. And if you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and submit them in the chat and the Q&A function, and we'll be covering off on those within the last 5 minutes of the webinar. So I want to go ahead and introduce our speakers today. So we have myself, Kara Glassman. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager at Reonomy. Jim Going, who's a Senior Vice President at Pinnacle Financial Partners, and Taylor Ragsdale, who's the Director of Implementation at Rabbit. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Jim and Taylor to introduce themselves and the companies that they're representing as well. Jim?
Thank you, Kara. My name is Jim Going. I'm with Pinnacle Financial Partners, and we're a $36 billion financial institution based in Nashville, Tennessee. I specifically work in the multifamily debt space for the bank, and we have offices in my group in Nashville, Memphis, Dallas, and Orange County. We're very thankful to be here today and glad to have everyone's participation. Taylor?
Thanks, Jim. And Taylor?
Yeah, hey all. My name is Taylor Ragsdale. I'm the Director of Implementation at Rabbit. My academic and industry background is in finance. I've held roles kind of across back office, middle office, front office. One of my biggest takeaways from the industry coming into Rabbit is how you operate a financial instrument and measure and manage your active portfolio is a crucial part of the organization realizing the value you booked when you transacted. So super excited to be here today to talk with you all a little bit about how FinTech addresses some of those best practices specifically in the CRE lending space.
Thanks, Taylor. So now we're just gonna go ahead and jump in and give an overview of Rabbit. So Taylor, do you want to take this away?
Yeah, thanks, Kara. So Rabbit's a platform specifically built on the idea of strengthening connection between lenders and developers. For those of you not familiar, a Rabbit is a woodworking joint, much like dovetailing, tongue and groove. So we've literally named ourselves with connection top of mind. Our CRE lender product centralizes the construction finance process, allowing you to track projects, draws, budgets, covenants, approvals all in one place. We increase the speed and efficiency at which a lender is able to review construction draws, primarily through using technology to automate resource constraining manual tasks. We provide you with structured, referenceable data that gives you the ability to streamline your workflow and analyze critical metrics for every loan directly within the platform. Our goal at the end of the day is for you to quickly know what's happening inside your entire portfolio and empower you with insights that you can act on.
Great, thanks, Taylor. And now we'll just go into a brief overview of Reonomy. So Reonomy is a leader within the CRE space for providing insights in technology, and we empower top brokerages, financial institutions, and commercial services. So you can see some of the clients on the right-hand side that are using our data and services. So our data helps our customers gain comprehensive market understanding, discover opportunities, and streamline their research processes. And at the bottom of the page here, you can just see some of the metrics that Reonomy has. So we have over 52 million properties within our database, and these are some of the attributes that go along with them. Over 30 million people profiles, over 5.2 million company profiles, and over 115 million event transactions. So this is just a few of the examples of the companies that we're representing, and I wanted to give a brief overview of why we thought it would be a good idea to bring these three companies together. So as many of you may be aware, CRE is a little bit behind within the technology space. Other industries have moved a little bit faster. And technology really helps people do their jobs better and more efficiently. And so at Reonomy, we aim to empower the CRE industry to make those smarter decisions when it comes to making deals. And at Rabbit, they help lenders manage those deals in a more efficient way. And Pinnacle has been able to leverage the technology to further their own initiatives. So it felt like it made sense to bring these three parties together to just talk about how modernizing the lending process from start to finish. So let's talk through some of the ways that tech and data are being integrated into the lending space. So Taylor, like I mentioned, Rabbit helps with the managing the lending process with the borrower, but how familiar are you with the operations that take place before the deals are made?
Yeah, at Rabbit, we don't always see the workflow leading up to the management of the loan. Would love if you could walk us through how your team thinks about opportunity discovery, deal sourcing, and what that process typically looks like for your clients.
Yeah, so Jim, as a user, I'd love to hear from you of like what criteria is your team typically using and narrowing in by with Reonomy?
Yeah, Tara, what we do is we look at Reonomy and create a sort on geography, on debt, on sponsor, and then on like I said, the geographical area of the property, where the property is located. And from that, we build a profile. We look at debt characteristics as well, such as the remaining loan term, as well as the interest rate and some other metrics. But what we do is we take all of that and then we compile that, and we try to develop a profile of a borrower that might be interested in discussing a refi opportunity with us, particularly on the multifamily side. And then we make that call. What that does for us, it gives us an informed knowledge base to make the call to that client or that prospective client or sponsor, and then without having to just pick up the phone and ask the person on the other end, do you want to refinance your property? We actually have a knowledge base that we can draw from, speak to them about certain attributes of their property, of their debt, and then hopefully have a quicker and more efficient process of originating that loan or getting that loan under application.
Got it. And so how do you identify motivated borrowers?
Well, everybody on our team is a little bit different, but the motivated borrower is typically somebody that has a short maturity period remaining on the transaction. Typically is with a bank, and then has a higher interest rate than what is currently being offered in the marketplace. That typically, the interest rate discussion, and then our ability to tell them that we can go typically longer term than a bank can on the amortization, as well as loan term maturity. That gets a borrower pretty motivated very quickly.
Got it. That's helpful. And can you provide an example of what you are looking for when you are going about finding an opportunity and discovering using Reonomy?
Yeah, as I said, we're looking at geography. We want to make sure that the property is located in a market or sub-market that we are going to lend in. Our program has certain geographical constraints, such as we will not go to a very small market. We want to make sure that even though a property may be in a Dallas MSA, it may be in a sub-market that is just not it's not compliant with our program guidelines. So we'll look at that. We'll look at the interest rate, the debt section of the data. We'll look at the rate to make sure that the rate is somewhat higher or very much higher. It could be materially higher than what we can offer. We have those discussions. with the borrower, and then also the term, if the debt is currently with the bank, we'll make the assumption that there's not a prepayment penalty, and we'll talk to the borrower about the possibility of looking at reducing that interest rate, going longer term, saving some cash flow, and that gets their attention.
So Kara, Jim just talked about using Reonomy's data to evaluate deals in markets where they know they want to invest. But our clients also using Reonomy's data to potentially look at other markets or other property types, and what does that process look like?
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned at the beginning, when I was going through the Reonomy overview, we have over 52 million properties within the platform. So if you are someone who is focused on a specific market right now, when you are using Reonomy, you do have access to all those 52 million properties. So you can search, as Taylor was mentioning, by a specific market. You can search by a specific neighborhood or zip code, and you can filter down by the asset type as well. So if expanding into different markets is something that you're interested in, and seeing what is going on there within the lending space, as Jim mentioned, using our debt filters is pretty powerful. So it's definitely something that we've had other clients do, just to see where else they may want to expand and put resources into.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry, Jim, do you have something to add to that?
No, I'm good.
So once you have the list of prospects secured that kind of meet your team's criteria, fit, how does Reonomy help leverage insights to kind of conduct the outreach involved in that?
Well, the main thing that Reonomy does after we have qualified or pre-qualified the lead is we're able to go and contact that sponsor via the contact information that's collected inside of Reonomy. It saves a lot of time, a lot of human capital efforts. We find that that's a very, very useful tool. One thing I didn't mention when we're doing the prospecting as well, we look at the additional debt or property that is owned by that sponsor or that borrowing entity or that is related to it. And from a standpoint that, we may be looking at one property and trying to qualify it, but then at the same time, if there's multiple properties that we can talk to the sponsor about, then it just opens up a greater channel of communication. Again, as much information as we can have on that initial call or that initial discussion, it's valuable to both us as the lender, and the sponsor understands that we're doing more than just asking for the loan. We've actually invested time and some effort and energy into the process to make that call as productive as possible.
And so, Jim, have you also used the ownership portfolios while you're having those calls and those conversations to potentially identify other properties or other opportunities that you and your team may not have known were out there without, the access to that ownership portfolio via Reonomy?
Absolutely, Tara. We've used that almost exclusively, or almost 100% of the time, to try to cross-reference any additional properties they may have for refinance opportunities. A success story in that regard is that we were doing some discovery on a particular borrower in a particular property. It was about a $4 million property. We uncovered that property. We found out all the information we needed to make that call, but then we dug down and determined that the borrower had, or the sponsor had, other borrowing entities that accumulated to about $60 million worth of debt that was all available for refinancing within the next 12 months. So we created our pitch, we created our presentation, and we were actually we're in the process of moving forward with that and closing that opportunity.
That's awesome. That's definitely a great success story about how the Reonomy portfolios have helped you find additional opportunities that you may not have been able to otherwise.
No, absolutely. It's a great tool for gathering information in a very efficient way.
Awesome. So I think now maybe it would be helpful if we shifted to managing the lending process. So, Taylor, I know in a modern process, we all know that data is key and necessary to ensuring that all the processes are optimal. So what data and Rabbit can we support in evaluating a borrower or a loan?
Yeah, so we all know and have experienced the power of data when you're looking for a contractor, a service provider to come to your home. You want data behind the individual, which we often find in the form of online reviews, things like that. When evaluating a borrower or a loan, financial institution is essentially doing the same thing, just in a more robust and structured way. Operating a loan in Rabbit is like writing the history book for future deal evaluations. All of the granular cost data that's typically tracked in siloed spreadsheets and PDFs can now be aggregated and analyzed with technology for future use. So say you want to understand the historical per square foot cost outturn of a mid-grade commercial project, specifically on the East Coast. Very specific, but technology like Rabbit can now help you do that with your own data in just a couple of clicks. Kind of leveraging the work that you did when you operated those historical loans, so you're not having to aggregate any new data. If you want to see on a previous project, if a particular borrower or a GC outturned on time, overran cost, all of those things you can now easily see in Rabbit in aggregate. Another way that we see some of our current customers utilizing the platform is attaching their internal risk profile metric to loans. So portfolio managers are then able to use this to ensure their portfolio is balanced when evaluating new deals. So the bottom line kind of being making data-driven decisions helps reduce risk and uncertainty when evaluating new deals, and historical data in Rabbit can help an institution do that.
That's great. And so how can a lender confirm that they have all of their required documents and information while executing typical construction financing?
Yeah, that's definitely a hefty process. Commercial construction draws are often 500 plus pages, and depending on the sophistication of the borrower that you're working with, can either be very well organized or in complete disarray when it's received by the lender. And I think if I polled all of the loan administrators on this call, I bet they would tell us the majority of the draws they receive lean toward the latter form. But lenders need to make sure they have things like the pay application from the GC, the associated lien waiver for the correct amount, an unconditional lien waiver from the previous draw, all the soft cost invoices. The list goes on and on. In some cases, institutions are even needing to ensure all of the subcontractor documentation is reconciling to the GC documentation. At the end of the day, the institution needs to track the funds that are outflowing and ensure all of the documentation supports those funds down to the penny. In a world of Excel and PDFs, that is really hard to do. And the value requested on the budget and the supporting document are never truly connected, which makes it difficult for lenders to have any kind of layered controls around those checks, or it requires a ton of bandwidth to do it effectively. So in Rabbit, you're able to easily associate those supporting documents to the value requested from the project budget line item specifically, which creates an audit trail that's super easily accessible for whoever in the institution requires access to it.
Yeah, that definitely seems like a very involved process. So how would a lender quickly check the requirements on each draw?
Yeah, that's That's a great point, that financial institutions often have conflicting operating goals that can cause some friction. They must be 100% compliant to the covenants of the loan, but also turn it around really quickly to provide the expected level of service to their customers and keep the project moving. We find that many institutions that we talk to spend a ton of time sorting and organizing documents and data to even be in a position to begin checking if those draw requirements have been met. But technology like Rabbit can significantly minimize the time spent organizing, structuring, and inputting all of that data through technologies like auto classification of documents and layering optical character recognition on top of the PDF pay applications and invoices, giving the lenders that quick access to structured data so they can quickly check all of those requirements. When your data is structured, it becomes much easier to see what requirements have been met and which require resolution. When you set up a project in Rabbit, all of those requirements are captured in the front end. And many of them Rabbit will automatically check for you to flag to the reviewer items needing resolution. All of that is viewable in one kind of consolidated screen for all draw reviewers. So you don't have to recreate the wheel each review tier. There are often lots of layers of approvals, and using technology, you can keep all of that in one place to keep the draw moving and through the workflow as quickly as possible.
Got it. And so the back and forth that's associated with the routine draw process is known to cause delays, though. So how can a lender using Rabbit easily tell when a project might be behind?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you set up a project in Rabbit, you have the ability to track dates and milestones of the project. So when do you expect construction to begin? By when should the developer have received the COO? What's the substantial completion date that you anticipate? All of that kind of stuff. You can capture it in Rabbit and be able to track it against real-time project progress. So as you're progressing throughout the life of the project, you get a real-time view of where the project is at against those milestones that you set in the beginning. Another thing that we see a lot through our reporting functionality is you're able to see things like, when was the last time I received a draw for this project? So project progress itself may not be the only indication that a project is falling behind. If you haven't received a draw for a project in, let's say, 45 days or something like that, that might be a risk you want to investigate. And you can easily see all of those metrics across your entire portfolio in Rabbit.
Got it. So now just shifting maybe a little bit to automating and optimizing the lending process itself. So how can technology potentially help earn, future business with a borrower?
Yeah, absolutely. So borrower experience with the lender and service level from the lender are super important. We know relationship managers spend a lot of their time ensuring the borrower is having a good experience. Putting together draw packages is a very labor-intensive task for most borrowers. Just as lenders know, deconstructing the draw, the borrowers have to do it on the constructing it side. So any technology that reduces the amount of work and time it takes for a borrower to submit their funding request is going to be valued by the borrower. We're rolling out a lightweight solution at Rabbit that will require little to no training from the borrower to be able to submit their funding requests to lenders easier and faster. I think ultimately what this results in is the borrower receiving funds sooner. And in an industry where slow payments, I think, really weigh on the ability to progress at a construction site, this is something that is super important to borrowers of all sizes.
Got it. And so if I were a lender, how would I use the technology to understand and monitor the risks across a portfolio?
Yeah, so the whole kind of process of papers and Excel sheets flowing everywhere and lots of hands touching the draw creates in itself a lot of risk outside of just the project risk itself. When it comes to construction risk monitoring, we see most institutions, both large and small, aggregating data by inputting loan information, project progress information, all manually into spreadsheets to then shuffle around between risk teams. That often requires ops teams to not only get the data right once, but now twice, maybe 3 times, depending on how many ancillary spreadsheets they're filling out every month by project. Using a technology like Rabbit allows you to have one data set that is being used by everyone. That massively reduces the risk of human error when numbers are being punched in into kind of an infinite variation of files every month. I think technology also allows some lenders to maybe monitor risks and aspects that were almost necessarily impossible before. We have a client who configured a report to see how many draws they were approving where requirements were not met. So how many times a month were they kind of overriding their own rules to keep things moving. I think doing this on a couple of draws a month to keep things moving, not a huge deal. If you're doing this on 80% of your draws, that may be a risk added to your portfolio that you, prior to technology, didn't necessarily have a mechanism to capture.
Yeah, so I think, just to recap and go back to the beginning of our conversation, it really sounds like in terms of research and automating and discovery, technology is really making its way through CRE and can be a very useful tool moving forward for a lot of people. So I know that we're coming up on the half hour, and I just want to make sure that we also leave some time for Q&A. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, if people do have any Q&A, please feel free to use the chat. I'm going to go ahead and monitor it and just make sure that we're answering questions for all parties on the phone. Great. So it looks like we have our first question here, which is if Reonomy offers any integrations. So we do offer a spectrum of integration capabilities with varying level of technology requirements. So many of our customers do use our data feed solutions, which are customized feeds of Reonomy data at the frequency and the data that is crucial to what our client is looking for. We also offer an API, which does allow our customers to integrate Reonomy data into their own internal system to make a more customized approach with real-time updates as well. And then lastly, we do have a lot of interesting work coming up with Salesforce and CRMs. So we offer an application which is called Easy API, and this is built on the Salesforce platform and requires no developer. So if you're tuned into our recent product webinar, then we also shared a sneak peek of some of the features that we are looking to roll out with our Salesforce integration, hopefully at some point within the next 12 months. So another question that came in is if Rabbit can interact with any of my current systems. So Taylor, I'll let you take that.
Yeah, thanks. Absolutely. Similar to what Kara was just describing, Rabbit's built on an open API. So if you would like to connect Rabbit with your LOS, maybe your core system, something like that, we certainly have the ability to do so. For smaller institutions who maybe don't want to fully kind of hook up systems, everything in Rabbit is exportable from Excel or CSV if some of your systems take an upload from that. So kind of capture the full range of needs there.
Great. And we have another question that just came in, which is if we will see a preview of Rabbit during this webinar. So Taylor, I'll also hand that one over to you.
Yeah, we did not plan to do that for this webinar, but we would love to show it to you. So I think my contact information or someone on our team's contact information will be sent out after this. Please get in touch with us and we'll be happy to set up a demo with you.
Great, thank you. So I don't see any other questions that are coming into the Q&A box here. So I think that then concludes our webinar today. Thank you everyone for joining and taking the time to speak with us and share a little bit more about Reonomy, Rabbit, and Jim's experience using technology in the lending space as well. Have a great day.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.